Hey, how you doing? We're just hanging out until everyone shows up. Ian, how you doing?
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
I am just setting up some final things. Just getting some pictures together.
I like it.
Okay.
Well, I just hang out a few more minutes while everyone's hopping on. Everyone's nice and early.
So nice when people join early.
I know. Great.
Hey, hi everyone.
I promise I'm going to be paying attention as much as I can, but I had a booking come in. So
There you go. That's what we want, right?
So I'm doing them and you guys. So
Nice. The background is fitting, so we know you're in the right place.
Listen, whoever joined early, maybe while we have a few minutes, just say hi and say where you're from.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of cool.
okay, I'll go first. My name is Trisha. I'm with Riddles and Lots Escape Games. We're in Warren, Ohio. We're a tiny little homebrew place in a really creepy old office building, so it really sets the aesthetic. I am the new business manager for this location, and so we're growing and expanding, and I'm really excited to be here.
Nice.
Awesome. And let's make it short. Just literally just the name and where you're from. That's it.
My name is Joe. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
Nice to
Welcome,
meet you, Joe. Awesome. Welcome.
Good stuff.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm from Port Angeles, Washington.
Hi, Nicole.
J.R. Booker, right outside of St. Louis, Missouri.
Nice.
Sarah Hicks. I'm with Get Out of My Escape Room in San Antonio, Texas.
Nice. Nice.
I am Chris. I'm calling from Greece. I'm in the escape room industry as a creator.
Nice. Nice. Do you own escape rooms in Greece?
I create escape rooms in Greece. We have created many.
Awesome. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Christine Valancourt. I'm with Premier Escape Adventures in Bradenton, Florida.
So welcome, Christine. There we go.
All right. If you guys just joining, just we have while we're waiting for more people to join, just say hi and say your name and where you're from, so we know.
Hi, I'm Zach McCrell with Doors of Divergence out of New York, New York.
There you go. Nice, Zach. I remember playing your rooms when I went to New York, by the way. Fun stuff. Love it.
Yeah, we do a couple of things different.
Absolutely. Love it.
Hi, I'm Anna Christofferson, and I'm joining from Toronto, Ontario.
Nice. Welcome on it.
My name is Derek DeJournas. I'm joining from Nebraska, and I'm not cool enough to have an escape room, but I have an axe throwing venue and paint splatter place.
Hey, it's part of the experience. All three of them go together.
Derek, welcome to the escape room community.
Yeah, thank you.
Just wait. You'll have one soon enough.
I know. That's what I'm afraid of.
Larry Tang, Concord, California.
Welcome, Larry.
Welcome.
Hi, it's Ivan with Questroom from Los Angeles.
One of my favorite escape rooms, the Minotaur. I just have to say that. Nice.
If you just joined us and have not introduced yourself, just say hi and tell us where you're from. And we're going to be starting in just a few minutes.
Hello, my name is Jay. I'm from Seattle, Washington.
Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Perfect. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Austin.
Hey everybody, I'm John. I'm from Lansdale, PA. I own Escapeopolis escape rooms, and we just started designing our own rooms recently.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Scott, I just saw you join.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Hi,
Hey,
Scott.
All right.
Hi, it's Daniel from Poland. It's pretty late, but I want to see what's up.
Poland.
It's
Nice.
Poland. Awesome.
Thank you for joining us. I know it's really, really late there.
Nice.
Hello, I'm Tove from Stockholm, Sweden. We have an escape room here, Escape Stories. We have 3 rooms and some portable games and outdoor games.
Nice.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us. And I
Yeah.
know it's inconvenient time for you guys, so really appreciate it.
There you go. Get extra coffee. Nice.
You will.
All right. Well, I'm sure some more people are going to be joining us, but probably it's a time for us to start. Austin, go ahead, do introduction.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Austin from Escape from Launchpad, Blue Apple Launchpad, with Dimitri, my business partner. And Ian is here today to basically lay down his amazing tech knowledge. And of course, as we go through this, if you have any questions or you have any topics that you want to bring up throughout, you're more than welcome to. Of course, we want discussion. So I think we'll just kick it off. I think a lot of you are already familiar with Ian, but if you're not, he's designing escape rooms all over. Just finished designing something for SeaWorld, I believe. So what are you seeing right now in regards to thinking about design? Like, what do you think about from the very beginning of design, specifically in regards to tech? And then we'll just kind of go off from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Ian, and yeah, okay, so my design process at this point, I start with theme. Well, I start brainstorming themes, right? Because themes are the easiest ones to kind of come up with. You can just kind of throw, I mean, that's like dartboard stuff, right? You can just kind of come up with a billion different ideas of like, oh, space and Egypt and whatever. And then hopefully one of them kind of speaks to you, right? Hopefully one of them you get and you're like, well, actually, I think that would be kind of cool. Like I can kind of already start to envision some stuff that I might do out of that. So, like, and again, theme's the least committal, right? Like you can, again, just come up with 100 options, right? So that's what I start with, just to kind of ballpark from everything, right? Because the creative cloud is gigantic. You can do literally anything when we're talking about this. So you got to narrow it down at least a little bit. So after I get my theme, the very next step I go for is your wow moments, right? And your wow moments are going to be these moments that you're talking to your friends in like a Zoom call, or it used to be the water cooler, right, where you were at the office and you were getting coffee with your buddy, and oh man, on the weekend I went to Paranoia and I did this, right? That moment right there, I think about like from the get-go, like basically as soon as I know the theme that I'm kind of ballparked in to kind of aim it around, I think about that exact moment immediately, because that's your freest sales. It's your freest word of mouth. It's going to be the thing that not only turns your customers into your marketers, but also like they also become hype men, right? Like, because it's going to be the coolest thing in your room. It's going to be the effect that you probably spent a lot of time on, probably a lot of money on, etc. So you do want them to talk about that. After that becomes the logical the logical puzzles, any of the logical inclusions. So like I'll use the low-hanging fruit, the pirate theme. What's in a pirate theme? Okay, well, I already did this big shebang of a cannon thing, so that's taken care of. But I need my pirate maps. I need my, wheel. I need my, dead man telling those tales, whatever, right? Just things that make sense, things that I don't have to stress too much about designing puzzles around. And then finally is just your duds. And this is kind of filler, right? This is the kind of stuff that comes at the end. It is both the most useless step and the most expensive, because this is when you can start putting a ton of money into aesthetics and paint, and you can start building out, like, now I want a cavern, like a full cave in my pirate experience. So now I'm gonna, structure out these walls. Well, sure, cool. Was that worth it? I don't know. I mean, maybe it was. It depends on kind of how you can get it together. But my point is that last category, again, is just infinite, right? You can just pretty much that is not the one you're supposed to be focusing on. Again, that's why I started in that order. I really want to focus on the stuff that other people are going to talk about, right?
Nice. So I guess on this topic, if anyone has anything you want to bring up about this topic specifically, their design aspect, we can have, if you have any questions, maybe put it in the chat, or topics, we can go from the chat as well. If you don't have anything, I'll kind of move through, and as you think of stuff, just put it in there. So let me see if someone just added to the chat right now.
And it's best if you don't raise the hand, but instead just write it down. So we'll review it and bring it up as we progress.
Yeah, I'm the moderator today, so so just put it in the chat, and then I'll bring it up. You mentioned, like, people don't necessarily get an effect from accomplishing more goals, so to speak. Like, they're not directly correlated. You were talking about that when we were speaking previously. So how does the effect differ from just conquering a goal perspective?
For context here, basically, escape rooms are a weird model, just functionally. Like, from an interactive entertainment perspective, escape rooms are a really weird model. Okay. And the reason for that is because we are asking of our players, our interactees, to accomplish several tasks, right? And like, puzzle design is very interesting, where you can make things that are truly inspiring and truly, like, innovative and stuff like that. And people who resonate with them, they go nuts, right? You can absolutely kill it. But here's the thing, is that that's not the majority of escape rooms. The majority of escape rooms by proxy have to be basic puzzles. And so now we have kind of a conundrum when we start looking at the lowest common denominator of this industry. Is I want my players to experience the experience, right? I want them to do the thing. I want them to slay the dragon. I want them to travel to outer space, right? I want them to do this, right? So why am I gate holding behind puzzles, right? And there's smart ways of doing this. The classic example is like the power outage situation, which is a great stage effect. All you do is just kill the lights, right? Maybe you turn on red lights in an emergency situation, and then the players have to logically go turn the power back on. Okay, cool. Puzzle solved. You're doing something, cause and effect, right? Kind of real world consequences. The issue becomes when you then kind of expand it back to what is now an outdated version of the escape room industry. You gotta, like, all this stuff started with basic math and basic, alphabets and ciphers and all that stuff, right? Unfortunately, there's still a lot of that in the industry, and I really do feel like we're getting to more, again, effect-based gameplay. So that's what I was kind of talking about as far as inputs, outputs. When you have a puzzle, ultimately, to me, it boils down to on or off, right? Did you solve the puzzle or did you not solve the puzzle? Okay, now there can be a dozen other things that happen before that point, but ultimately, to me, it's a binary signal. So it really doesn't matter what happened. I mean, you just have to wire it up, right? that's going to trigger the effect. Now, again, because my base denominator, because it is just one in or out, that means everything before that is just overcomplication to me as the tech. Now, on the flip side of that, the effect, one element, right, that's in your effect, your show, if you will. We can use the escape room example. That's going to be your maglock, right? Say this maglock opens up your reveal, right? You got a door, it's maglock shut, it opens up your reveal. Wow, oh my God, I can't believe the bookcase opened. Okay, so that's your effect. However, if you then add a light to that same bookcase reveal, wow, it just gets that much better. And then if you also add a sound to that bookcase reveal, and also if you have fog kind of drifting out as a result, right? So every single time you add something to the effect half of this, it becomes an additive experience. And it starts, that's the stuff that starts to resonate with people, in my opinion, because again, people are not necessarily always attuned to what the cause to their effect is. You see it happen in traditional escape rooms a lot, where sometimes people will solve puzzles and they really don't, and something will open and they really don't understand why or when that happened. It's a little bit of failure in design, sure, but it happens more often than not. But they will always go and open the door that it just opened, right? So they may have missed what they were supposed to be doing from a puzzle aspect, but they'll never miss the actual, like, you know, reward for their efforts, or at least what they think they're doing. Yeah, so effects have pretty much strictly additive property, and the input, the puzzle aspect, not strictly additive. I mean, again, sometimes puzzles are just amazing. Sometimes they're super interactive and super smart, and you know what you had to do is very very unique, you know, very something that you can't do at your own place, or you can't experience at your own place or your own reality, whatever that may be. But so I actually have a little slideshow.
Bring it on.
Got it for
I don't
you.
know. So I have one question here. Maybe you can briefly touch on it and then go to your slideshow. So
sure.
I was saying, at what point do you think about cost? And I think this was tangenting off of your initial, you know, adding the cave dynamic to the pirate theme, etc.
So cost. So there's reality, and there's reality of the business at half of this, and then there's the creative design of this. I would say you never think about cost in the pure creative half of it, right? Because you don't, trust me, reality will come and kick your ass later. You do not need to limit yourself in the beginning when you're thinking of this creatively, because you'll be so surprised when you kind of like, okay, well, this is what my goal is. This is what, because I went through that method and like said, this is what the best version of this can be. When you start pulling back costs, it becomes a lot easier to still maintain the key points. And again, that's what I'm saying about that fourth step, is that you'll find maybe a lot of the elements that you were planning on having in your like final vision, they were actually superfluous, and you know, maybe you didn't need them in the first place. But the good news is you can just keep adding them in, right? Like if you do have more budget and you feel like it's going to add, but I'm actually gonna touch on that. Diminishing return is a real thing for sure, and you really can get into a situation where you know, all your effort just starts going to waste. All your money starts going to waste because you've already added everything you need. You may not know it, you may not feel it, but like the game's running, the game's active, and more stuff doesn't necessarily mean more entertainment value or long-term more value, more money. You know, there's a great, I use this quote all the time. The project's never done, the deadline's just due. And that's from the film and animation industry, because like, of course, like you could always make it better. You could always, there's infinite variations, but sometimes you got to put it out, get the product ready. You know, we gotta make money here. So
everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Dimitri, and my partner Austin, the owners of Blue Apple Marketing and Escape Room Launchpad. We also own Paranoia Quest Escape the Rooms in Phoenix and Arizona, and maybe you heard about our Arizona escape room called Quest Video. And today we have Ian. He's amazing, and we see him all the time working on a different cool projects. So we invited him to this meetup call to share with us what he thinks and his knowledge. And if you have any questions, to write notes section, and Austin will review them as we go. And Ian, yeah, go ahead.
okay, cool. So when I am looking at tech for these things, I at some point had to consolidate a lot of yeah, I do a lot of projects for a lot of different people. Like, just to touch on that very briefly, if you didn't know, I am truly independent. I'm not with a company. I'm not so I've helped a lot of different people with a lot of different games, and that means they're coming from all different design standpoints, right? They're coming with all different ideas and all different kind of methods and all that stuff. So at a certain point, I had to figure out the commonalities of both the escape room design model and then tech that could facilitate that. So this is kind of where I settled. I do want to show one of the boards I have real quick, just so that we can see kind of the end results of where I got to after all this time. Oh no, doesn't like it. I don't know why. Okay, cool. So this is a pretty consolidated system. This is just a standard master brain. This happens to be using the COG system. If you're familiar or not familiar with it, it's a control software. And then it's also using DMX control. The reason I can show this one is it's because every single board I do pretty much looks like this at some point. This is how I've consolidated it down, is I've basically turned this into inputs and outputs. I do have some redundancies put in there so that I can help troubleshoot with people. And then otherwise, again, I had to figure out a way to integrate all sorts of props, because people would come and they'd say, okay, I bought this from China. Okay, I bought this from Russia. Okay, I bought this from, you know, somebody made it for me. Somebody was a hobbyist and they happened to put this together. So I had to figure out a way to like have all that stuff talk to itself. And these are kind of, oh my God, this screen share is killing me. Okay, perfect. So these are the kind of the philosophies that I set out to you know, make sure I was using as I was developing these systems. So first and foremost is reliability. The number one reason that I'm called in ever is because, you know, something broke, obviously. The jobs I get called on for often are what I call Frankenstein jobs, which is essentially the idea that a game was working previously and it has since, you know, lost a lot of its oomph and needs to be restored back to where it once was. I'll tell you, those jobs are super annoying and super dangerous, because that's when I'm involved. I have no idea. Like, I cannot even express to you how wildly different these random designs are when you're dealing with a person-to-person basis. They're all over the place. But that kind of inspired this first thing, reliability. If the game doesn't work, what are you even doing? You know, if the game doesn't work, the show doesn't go on. Like, that's the point of this, right? You're in the business of entertainment. Part of that is making sure that the product is always good to go. This is also where I'll kind of nag on housekeeping. I will stress to you guys just how wildly successful organization and coding is. Get your systems set up so that it makes sense to you and you're consistent, because consistency is everything. Like if you're consistent, things become so much easier down the line. And I'm talking like really down the line. I'm talking like 5 years later. And it's like, oh, well, how's this set up? It's like, oh, well, it's set up exactly the same way I've been doing it every day for the past 5 years. I don't, and again, this is just from a weird experience where I just go in and whoever did it before me just seem to do whatever they want at times. And it's just, I don't understand it. We are aiming for immersion here. That is the point of all interactive entertainment. That's really the point of all entertainment in a nutshell, even theater, you know, take your pick. Interactive entertainment are a special breed. It's the next generation. And the reason that it has this power is because it has power over senses that are not just vision, right? That has been the big thing. So TVs are like, okay, cool. You know, you can put you in it. And then now we have VR, so you can really kind of be engaged in it. Sound, that's why people love their sound systems, especially when you're watching a movie in a home system with a great sound system, is you get really immersed in the movie because sound is very important. But what we get to do is we get to start integrating smells. We get to start integrating touch. We get to start building textures so that people can engage in it. And at a certain point, we start tricking people entirely that they're living our fantasy, whatever that may be. This is also where you get to make the critical distinction of where tech is involved, because this is where we start doing magic things, right? If we're playing a sound that is not native to an office building in central New York, like grasshoppers or something, that is where you know, okay, this is an appropriate use of tech, because I'm doing something that is manipulating the environment to my design. Cool. If you go too far, then you know, like this is Pixar's philosophy is the tech should always support the art, not the other way around, right? The art's not supposed to support the tech. So if you know, that's where I would advise against over teching, right? Is that if you need enough to emphasize what you're trying to get across, but overcomplication will kill it just as fast, right? Because you can just muddy up the show. I mean, it's the equivalent of like having a canvas and you paint a really nice picture of a bird or whatever, and then just absolutely go nuts and put a bunch of extra paint on top of it, right? Like that picture that you probably would have been fine with, completely lost. And then last but not least, and probably actually the most important, is fun. It drives me nuts. Drives me actually up the walls. I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a little bit. We are designing experiences for entertainment. They're supposed to be fun above all else. Like, and you know, you can have movies that are terrible, but at least they're fun, right? I've had some crazy ideas come to me. When some person's like, oh, I want to have a grandma's attic, and wouldn't it be cool if they had to like fold laundry? They had to like put the laundry back in a laundry basket as a puzzle. And I'm like, are you nuts? like there's just some disconnect that happens when you get too, like, I guess this is kind of my suggestion to not take it so seriously and like enjoy it a little bit, because like people just get so caught up in what's so unique or what's different or like what's, you know, I couldn't tell you how they get to these places sometimes, because ultimately they forgot the golden rule is like, I promise it doesn't matter if it looks like garbage. If it's fun to play, you will have people talking about it. Actually, you know, we had a splatter room guy in here, right? He knows. There's no concept. There's no narrative in that. You just go in and splatter a bunch of paint around it. Why? Because it's a blast. That's it. Rage Room's kind of the same thing. That's more cathartic, I guess. But Okay, and you notice I did set this up in a Venn diagram, and that's because these all kind of interrelate into each other too. There we go. All right, so in between reliability and immersion, we have intuitive designs. This is a twofold, so it's intuitive on both sides, back end and front end. The front end, you want to make sure that the players understand what's happening. That can be very difficult. It's a lot easier said than done to make your players or your theaters or interactees, whatever you want to call them, actually understand what the point is, what they're supposed to do. What the narrative is really hard in escape rooms, just because you don't really have their attention, so you kind of have to like railroad them on to what you're trying to do. I mean, narrative is talked about all the time. And it's difficult. But, as far as puzzle design, as far as cause and effect, this is where you do get punished for trying to break the mold too much. Like, one of the things that I will kind of reiterate is that you need to keep it simple. Well, that's going to be the theme of this entire talk, is because, like, trying to be different for the sake of being different almost exclusively backfires. People are going in, and keep in mind that in order to bridge somebody into a fantasy world, you kind of need to take some baby steps. So that means, like, unless you're a good game design tutorializes what you're about to do, right? So you can't just drop somebody into the middle of a puzzle, especially if it's a tech puzzle where the stimulus is kind of weird, and expect them to absolutely know what's going on right off the bat, right? So you got to kind of prep them. You got to kind of do, like, I guess one of the examples of something like that would be you give a square peg in a square hole, right? And you just have that be the one thing that you do. And then later you give, like, a bunch of different pegs and a bunch of different holes. That's tutorialization, right? Kind of introduce a concept, allow them to explore it, and then now that gets a lot more complicated, right? We're talking now like maybe a spaceship or something, emulated spaceship. You could have a complex series of launch instructions that people need to follow. As long as you at some point introduce them to the idea that they need to flip a switch and push a button, cool, awesome. You just, again, need to kind of wean them into it. And so that's the front end design, right? Making sure that the players understand what's going on. And if they don't understand what's going on, they at least have a reasonable shot at figuring it out. The back end design is trying to stay as consolidated as possible for your tech, for your design. You saw, that's why I showed the board early. That is a result of being consolidated. That's why it's all centralized. That's why it all comes back to the same power source. It all comes back to the same control system. It all comes back to the same output system. That's because, and this is where the reliability comes in, when the designs are smart like that, I can give somebody a call, or rather they can call me, and I can talk them through it. Right? I don't need to be there. I can do it completely remotely. And it's because the designs are straightforward. And from my point of view, it's consistent among multiple different escape rooms that I've done. So if, guy X calls me from Philly and says, hey, this is broken, what's going on? I know it's exactly the same troubleshooting method that I just used in California. So that way I can stay consistent. And what's better, now, because I'm staying consistent, I can teach you to stay consistent, right? So I can teach you, this is the basics of how this is happening. Let me teach you how to replace a light bulb. Let me teach you how to replace a maglock. Let me teach you how to replace a reed switch. And so now you start getting your own agency as owners to be able to, fix your own tech and maybe even riff on your own tech. I've had that happen a couple of times too. It's awesome to see every single time. They're like, yeah, I kind of looked at what you did, and then I kind of recreated it and changed one thing out, and awesome, perfect, good job. Reliably fun, all about the mechanics. If the mechanics are fun, if what the player is doing is interesting, you're good. Little cut off there, but that's okay. I had my roommate in college was a game design major, and they were very much mechanics first. That's just kind of what they put out there for games. I'll try to bridge the video game gap here, but essentially the graphics of a game, you know, people understand that, right? How pretty it looks. Now, if we're comparing that to escape rooms, or comparing that to real world, it would be the aesthetics, right? It would be how decorated those aesthetics out. Here's my opinion on aesthetics, and I am extremely biased on this, so grain of salt. You basically need to pass the first impression test. As long as people go into a new environment and they say, wow, that's cool, or I'm going to give that a shot, that is the bar for aesthetics. Everything after that becomes diminishing return, I promise. And that's a cold, hard truth, but I have very rarely seen people like been able to justify, you know, the extra $100,000 they spent on aesthetics. That's the kind of stuff that theme parks do, and they do it because they have a million people going through them every year. So maybe somebody is going to notice their 1% detail. But again, my central pillar of design, game design, room design, is to make sure that the wow moments are in effect. So that's where game mechanics work, right? What are they going to do? And it's always an action with me too, by the way. Like I don't do puzzles as my wow effects. I do like, you're going to slay the dragon. And when I say slay the dragon, that means a sword is going through a dragon's head, right? That's what they're gonna, because again, it's all about what are they going to talk about. You're taking down the alien queen. That means that you're going to be the one, you know, pressing the button that's shooting the laser that's taking down the alien queen, right? And again, that's exactly what I'm talking about with just solid mechanics. And kind of going back to the fun side of this is like a solid mechanic is just, it's interesting in its own right. It's interesting because that's the point. Like, here's my keep it simple moment is that if you find yourself stressing too much on what would be fun, then you're probably going the wrong direction anyways. Because like if something's fun, it's just, you know, what, like a Pac-Man. Left, right, up, down. That's it. It's the only mechanics of the entire game. Collect things. That's it. The whole Mario thing. Jump. That's it. That's the entire mechanic. Sonic's mechanic. Run. That's it. Like the lower to the ground your mechanics are, the more you have the ability to variate. And you know, people talk about the narrative drive of their games all the time, but it's not necessarily that often you hear about the mechanical drive that runs. You know, there's a couple cool ones out there, but like if you look at major video games, they will almost always have a central mechanic which everything else branches off of, and then the game narrative is also it usually in the context of providing that game mechanic growth, right? How can I go from being a peasant to being Superman, you know? And that's game progression. Agency is I wrote this little blurb to try. Agency is very interesting. Player agency is very important. And this is where cause and effect starts to become very, very important. We talked about the scenario where people didn't necessarily understand what they were doing in order to get the effect of that happened, right? They didn't understand necessarily that the puzzle mechanics that they're playing, the switches that they were tinkering around with, yes, that was actually what you're supposed to do, and that's why it moves forward. If you can, make sure you instill that sense of accomplishment onto them and make sure they realize that their actions have consequences, but have, you know, rewards as well. You know, the progression of gameplay. All of a sudden now you can kind of turn them into the main character. And I've described escape rooms to people outside the industry as you're the main character in a movie. I've described it to people like that for a long time because it's honestly just kind of hard to explain it to them any other way, in my opinion. Like, as soon as I start saying, oh yeah, you're like solving the puzzles, well, that's not necessarily true all the time, or oh, you're, you know, in a whatever. And but yeah, so I try to think like you're basically making your players into the main character. You're allowing them to experience the plot firsthand. You're allowing them to have the decisions that will ultimately affect their fate. And kind of running back to intuitive design on this one, like, if your design is good, you will present the illusion of free choice. Agency, this is why it's weird. This is why agency is very weird. It's because it's not necessarily reality. You can choose something and have that affect what's happening, and not, you can know something's fake and still have agency in it, right? And so, like, a good example of kind of the illusion of free will here in a game setting is that you have like choice A, choice B, like salvation, damnation, and maybe they have a different immediate effect. Maybe they play a different sound, but then they both force you to do the same puzzle anyways. As long as the players felt like it was a rewarding, you know, that different sound that they got for going this different choice was a rewarding reward, they still have agency in it, right? Because they still feel like they did something to kind of change the world around them. And you're creating that world. You're making this fictionalized. So honestly, there's really no reason not to give them that power. You know, if you're going to create a scenario where they're on a pirate ship and they're hunkering the 7 seas, why not, you know, sprinkle a little extra magic in there and allow them to be, you know, their Jack Sparrow-esque super pirate? If you can do it, awesome. If you can allow them that experience, and again, keep in mind, this is with immersion, right? So this is when we're trying to get them to be that super pirate. We're trying to make them like smell the sea air and feel the wind in their hair and feel like, you know, when they're yanking that chain, it is actually making the ship go. And you're like, how are you doing all these things in a box room? And it's like, well, that's the point, right? Like that's where tech matters, is because, like, for example, the pulling the rope and having a sail rise or whatever. Could you do that for real? Of course you could. Is that practical? Not even close, right? So this brings me to one of my final points is, keep it simple, stupid. This has ironically has so many different layers to it. I will start with the example I just gave. You can't build a real mast. You can't build a real roped mast. But what you can do is you can emulate it, right? And you can take a rope and you can take just a roller and you can have that trigger a signal and then play a media file where you see yourself, you know, see the sail unfurl, and then you put a wind in their face. That is the illusion. That is the money right there. That's how I would attack an effect like that, because doesn't that sound like an awesome pirate wow moment? Is just like, I got the ship to sail. But how did I do it? I did not go and say, okay, well, let's go buy a ship, right? Like, I'm like, okay, well, what can I break this down into? How can I break it down into parts? What are they actually doing? What's the action they're performing? What is the, you know, what are they feeling? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? And then, do I need to go any further? Probably not. You know, I don't need to shine a light in their face or anything like that. That doesn't make sense. So cool, I'm done. I take control of most of their senses, at least for a couple of seconds while they're enjoying themselves. They get to say, I live the pirate dream, and everybody's happy, and, you know. Meanwhile, the actual setup on my side was 3 connections, right? And that's going to be really important, because unfortunately, while we're talking in a vacuum and I'm talking about one wow moment, typically you should probably have at least 3 to 4 in like a 60-minute room. And there is all the other stuff that needs to go on, right? Unfortunately, we really can't get around as far as biding time for 60 minutes. It would be not only very difficult, but not necessarily advised to be hitting them, pounding them with stuff every single, like every 5 minutes, right? You can definitely go too hard, because then what ends up happening is if there's too much stuff going on, you start memory clipping. So now they just think back, and now you can kind of, again, put on your little, look into your little crystal ball about that water cooler moment, but you can also look in what happens when they walk outside your door. They're like, wow, wasn't that fun, everybody? It's like, yeah, what'd we do? Or this also memory clipping, just FYI, if your game masters do this, don't allow them to do this. There's a thing called the falling action in literature, and that happens after the climax in a novel. The falling action is really important because it allows you to kind of see the end result of the final conflict, right? Escape rooms do not engage in a falling action whatsoever. They pretty much do the big shebang and then they exit the room immediately, right? Okay, what ends up happening is if you have a game master come in and interrupt your celebration from slaying the big bad or doing the big thing, whatever you're supposed to be doing, that causes memory clipping. Again, it's they walk outside that door, and instead of remembering the big finale that you were supposed to have, they remember the game master coming in and interrupting them. So yeah, just a little bit of tidbit. Put a cooldown puzzle, something simple. Press a button, do something. Just don't end your big shebang and then like rush them out of the room immediately. Unless you're like really building up to it. If you have like a bomb and it's like you can make it so that no matter what, they're always finishing with 1 second or whatever, that's kind of different, because then you can kind of come in and build on it. But okay, so I am going to go back to this page. I would strongly recommend everybody screenshot that. And then I'll go to the next one and you can screenshot that. Because then I have the top 5 tech that you should go understand how it works. All right.
While people doing screenshots, maybe Austin, is there any good question you want to ask from the audience?
There are multiple questions. It's hard to choose which one. All right, so
oh man, my chat was way behind. I was not keeping up.
I know. You have your material. We can probably save some of them for the end, but I'll pull out one of them now. So what if someone doesn't have, like coding experience and they're trying to, get done some of this Arduino stuff?
So fuck Arduino. There's your answer on that. I learned how to do DC circuits from the Navy, and I will tell you that the stuff that we do in the escape room industry oftentimes does not have to get off of those DC circuits. I will give you a very, very quick rundown of what DC circuits are. Basically, DC circuits are very, very low voltage circuits. DC stands for direct current, meaning that it is it needs both positive and negative in order to power, making it technically more safe than AC, which is runs through your household. Yeah, I lost where I was going with that. Repeat the question.
The question is, if they don't have coding experience,
right,
how can they still complete the same puzzles?
Right. So there are fantastic pre-made controllers available. The Escape Keeper is a great little escape game puzzler. It actually can hold 2 puzzles in one, and then it has a bunch of you can wire it to pretty much anything: maglocks, lights, what have you. There's also, I won't go through the whole Fright Ideas catalog, but they do have quite a few other controllers that do very similar things. There are awesome Chinese boxes I wouldn't necessarily rely on them all the time, but they do their job very, very well. They're just not very versatile. So, but you can get those off of like Mysterious Studios, or it used to be like J 1987 or something, JX 1987. There's also programmable logic controllers. That's PLCs. There's a bunch of different brands, but that doesn't use coding. It uses what's called ladder logic. The reason I use the COG system and the Fred Ideas system before that is because actually I will bring up Director. It reads like English. You can set up it reading like English. So that the coding of it is basically like when input 1, then output 2 or something. Hold on, I'm just trying to pull up the scene real quick. Do 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 do. Okay, perfect.
Everyone, take a look at the Scott note. He mentioned a YouTube channel that helped a lot. I suggest that YouTube channel as well. It's a great resource.
Oh yeah, I did too. Yeah, I'm not your Arduino guy, but Alistair definitely is. That guy has basically provided like a straight up masterclass. If you subscribe to his Patreon, you get his Arduino code, so he actually skips a lot of that process, and then you can just follow the tutorial to build the thing. All right, I for whatever reason cannot stream Director, but yeah, Director is awesome as far as that's concerned. It reads like English if you set it up properly. Why is and then let me just the screen sharing not doing well. Okay, so there's that screen, and okay, another question.
Okay, so let's do one more question here. What is your position on building puzzles, props, and components that are modular so that the entire unit can be installed or removed more easily?
It's great. I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that question. I mean, so like, yes. Modularity is a really like. I've been dealing with modularity in some form or fashion basically since the beginning. It's been pretty much like one of the very first things I designed was this kind of mad scientist room where essentially it was just the actual game was just a central board, and it just had a bunch of keypads on it which could be reprogrammed, and then when all of those keypads were triggered it would solve the final puzzle. And the whole point of that was that you could then take modular puzzles and kind of swap them out, right? And then just, you know, that way you had puzzle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You swap out 2, it yields a new code. You change out the code. Cool, modular, right? I've built games that are meant to be shipped and then Cat 6'd together. I personally have a game called it's with me and my business partner. It's called The Vault. So that is mobile and ready to go. I guess, do you want to clarify that question a little bit? Like, what's the dilemma here? Like,
there's no dilemma. I think you answered pretty well that yes, you like the idea of doing it this way.
Just like it or not? Yeah, of course. I will say that it's overrated. Like the ability to move, unless that's something that you're planning on doing actively, it's not as important as it seems. I would say that rather than modularity in those terms, it is very helpful to have multiple hubs. So I set up multiple tech hubs. I have my centralized I have my centralized board that's usually outside the room and usually where everything runs back into, so I can do status checks and troubleshooting and whatever. But then usually I will run power to various different places in the room and build little miniature control boards and panels there as well. If I can help it, I don't do that, but every once in a while you get, just by the room, you get a very, very dense location of tech. A lot of lights in the location, a lot of maglocks, a lot of, media players, whatever. Media players especially usually have something under them, so that usually warrants having all your stuff there. And that, in that regard, modularity can be very helpful because that means you can build the boards ahead of time. And then if you're really good at it, you can start basically pre-wiring it ahead of time to the point of you wire it to an RJ45 breakout, and then you can Cat6 it together, right? So now your install can all be done in a more convenient location. You can have it on a board. You can test it outside the room, whatever. And then it's like, okay, cool, it's all together. Bam, in, staple, screw, plug it in. Awesome. So yeah, I do. I'm a big fan of doing that.
Nice.
I just saw one coming out. I will get to that in just a second. Okay, so top 5 tech to learn. 1, lighting. Lighting is everything. I cannot stress this enough. Lighting is like where the magic happens. I'm going to the ability to be good at lighting is a gift. This is one of the rooms that I had access to and helped out with. It may look familiar to those of you who know who it is. I won't say it, but yeah, that's what it looks like with lighting.
Oh, I think you're sharing. I don't think you're sharing a screen.
Sorry. Yeah, it bounced at me. Come on. Leave.
Ian, I wouldn't leave from your sharing screen, otherwise it takes forever to get back to it. Just running out of time.
Probably because I'm still like sharing 9 things. Wow, Google Meets is a little bit awkward with that, huh? It never closed any of the previous shares I had. Okay, how's that?
There you go. I can see it.
So that's Audrey. Everybody knows Audrey. That's what it looks like with lights. House lights, show lights. It is night and day difference, and also it's so important for setting the scene. We're creating a fantasy environment. I hate white lights in escape rooms. I hate them. I'll take them out anytime I see them. That is literally the first thing I'll do when I'll show up at a location. If I see them, I'll go to Home Depot, and I'm like, I'm gonna go make a change, and I'll swap them all out for blues, oranges, yellows, and maybe greens, depending on what I'm feeling. Reds, etc. But very rarely are white lights going to be great. All right. This is the last time I'm jumping back, I promise. That was the last picture I had to share. Oh my God.
While you're trying to share again, another thing I'm going to mention, like lights, and I really like smoke. It's one of the easiest things you can do, and it makes so much difference. The only problem with the smoke is smoke machines. You need to make sure that it's going to be allowed in your area. But otherwise, it makes so much difference if you can use it properly.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I lost it. I'm not even gonna bother because it's just a list. Next
Ian,
one.
will you be open to share the slides after this?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. They're all just PNG files. But what about those with visual difficulties? What's the easiest way to combat with the lights? So lighting luminosity is additive, and also in my experience, you will have people complain no matter what. I've had people in broad daylight, basically, like literal scoop lights, and they're still like, it's too dark in here. So I personally prefer to make sure that it's thematic and that it works, because we can always just give them a flashlight if it really matters that much. Again, it's their experience that they're ruining, not mine, but I'm designing the best experience possible. If they want to kind of back it up because they're not comfortable with it, then I also want them to be comfortable, right? So yeah. Again, sorry, I'm gonna try to get through this so that we can at least get under the 7 o'clock. Okay, so tech to learn. Sounds are really important. Soundtracks, sound effects, ambient sounds. They all contribute quite a bit. You have so much control over your player's mood with sound. You have so much control over the immersion factor. Real quick, soundtrack, usually music. It is how you control mood. That is its goal. Ambient sounds, those are usually going to be sound effects. And that is going to be how you control the setting. That is going to be how you give the illusion of the setting that they're currently in. And then lastly, your prop sounds, those are just going to be specific, but having directional sounds does add to the realism of it. Number 3, media players. Media players are awesome. There's a Sprite player, Bright Sign player. There's dozens of Arduino players that play a video. One of my favorite effects is called the magic window effect, and it is so effective. You basically just put a TV behind a window, a fake window, and then you put a media player, and surprise, surprise, now when they look outside the window, they are seeing a different reality. So that's really cool. It's really kind of jarring. It does really great work to expand the space of your room, because now your box of a room suddenly has a universe outside of it, and you can do all sorts of nutty things with that technology. Number 4, fogger. I agree. So yeah, foggers are awesome. They're really cool effects. They're really additive. You can do a ton of things. Haze, which is really low to the ground. The one awkward thing about foggers is that, unfortunately, in any indoor properties, they are very counterintuitive to fire. Fire marshals really don't like foggers. Sorry. If you can work it in, awesome. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. It's just great for another effect. And finally, pneumatics and actuators. Actuators are a little bit more important because there's electric versions of them. If you're going to do any sort of automatically opening something, be it a door, bookcase, prop, monster, what have you, you're probably going to have some sort of actuator in there. Pneumatics are air. And air is very similar, where if you're going to have anything move, you're probably doing pneumatics. And here's the thing about pneumatics: they require a compressor, but as soon as you get the air system infrastructure in place, awesome, you're good to go, right? Because now, as soon as you add one, you might as well add 6 more, and they're really great to multiply, because then now, instead of just having the arm move of your animatronic, you can have the entire body move. So that's my top 5: lighting, sounds, media player, fogger, and then pneumatic/actuators. Cool. All right. I hope I pretty much got through everything I wanted to get through. So awesome. I know it's a lot of information. We can go through questions in about 2 seconds. I help people with tech. That's how I know that, like, my day job is that I travel and I go and basically build it for people. I will go and wrap people around. What I have been doing over the past couple of years is making sure that I'm teaching the intro version of this 12 volt. And I want to see you guys succeed. I want to see you guys fish for yourselves. And yeah, that's where my philosophy is. I mean, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it because, again, I very much believe that education wins here. And yeah, we can Q&A as long as we don't get kicked out.
Awesome. Okay, so once again, let's still post it in the chat here. So yeah, I think you just answered the question. So you do consulting, and or you'll go around and help people if they so choose to need your services. Perfect. Let's look through the questions here.
Oh, I will be going to Transworld, Jared.
Nice. That's good stuff.
I'm trying my best to get some sort of seminar. There's exactly one opportunity for that, but I wouldn't hold my breath. So.
There is a great question from High Orbit Games. Where do you recommend new escape room companies find great contractors? Honestly, so the way how I would reply, look up in the Facebook groups, in escape room community groups. Just post the question, hey, I'm looking for such and such, and people will generally start sending you like, hey, use this guy, and people gonna like the guys who they've been using actively. Like, for example, Ian gets a lot of replies on electronic stuff. Then there is few prop builders guys who also get a good, good replies. So ask these questions, and people will genuinely share with you who they use.
Yeah, we're one of the things that is still goes over a lot of people's heads is the escape room industry is just not that old. It just really isn't. It's only about 15 years old. I mean, we're still in the Wild West and with stuff like this. There are a couple of companies who are building out full rooms. There's your Industry Room and Giant Dream Productions and Time Quest and Imagination and Illumination and whatever. So there's a bunch of full room producers, right? As far as contractors go, yeah, I agree. I mean, just kind of post and say you're looking for something. It kind of depends. At this point, it's a good time right now because there's just enough people to spread the spectrum of need. Like there's a lot of contract. Like you can get a story guy, and you can get a tech guy, and you can get a scenic guy, and you can like that. That didn't used to be like that. Where like if you were gonna, oh, I need a scenic guy. Well, you can't get an independent scenic guy. You got to go buy the whole thing. Yeah, hi Blake. And yeah, I mean that I have plenty of, I don't know, Transworld is actually definitely one of the better places to go to, although you'd have to probably arrange that meetup before you showed up. Finding them on the floor would be a little bit awkward. Yeah.
What do you recommend for power distribution? Question near the bottom there.
So it's actually one of the benefits of doing centralized systems is that you can have a centralized power source. So I use 12 volt, 30 amp power sources, and then I centralize everything. So that means that I run from that central board. I will run 12 volt every which way. And I have very, very rarely ever seen an escape room need more than 30 amps. Even with, 6 or 7 maglocks on it, a dozen lights, et cetera, right? So, yeah, one of the seminars I had at Transworld was actually exactly about that concept, just the idea of like all of these pre-made puzzle boxes come with a little 12 volt brick. And so if you've been in the escape room industry for 2 to 3 years, you probably have a full box of those. And you can, as it turns out, you don't actually need those, right? You can just kind of loop them all together. And that also allows you to troubleshoot dramatically easier because now it's like, okay, well, I know my power's good. And I know I can also trace it from that centralized point. Yeah, I won't really go into how I do troubleshooting, but essentially isolation is very helpful. The ability to quickly identify generally what's not working, right? Because as soon as you can ballpark a fault, you can start specifying it very quickly after that. You know, if you have a big old tree, if you know it's on one branch, it's like, okay, well, it's only going to be one of these leaves, you know. Let's see.
When designing puzzles, what do you consider a higher difficulty puzzle?
So I will introduce you to a concept called phases. And this is a concept I toyed around with a little bit when I was trying to kind of come up with a unified difficulty algorithm. Difficulty in escape rooms is bullshit, in case you didn't know. Anybody who says, oh yeah, this is a 5 out of 10, that has no bearing on anything. Like, that number had to have been made up. You can say, oh yeah, we got it from our win percentage or whatever. But anyways, a difficult puzzle would be something that the easiest way to make a puzzle difficult is, well, there's a really easy way that's not fair, and then there's a way to make a design. If you design an unfair puzzle, it's because usually you have removed too much context from the puzzle for it to be solved logically, right? So that's a difficult puzzle. It's easy to make a puzzle difficult, right? You just start making it no context. It's the equivalent of having a Sudoku and basically only filling in one square, right? Like, sure, it's difficult, but that doesn't mean it's interesting. As far as making it more difficult and fun, that's when phases come into play. Phases to me are basically how many different elemented steps did players have to take before the final outcome of the puzzle was achieved, right? So the example of this is a place the object puzzle. So place the object puzzle, the act of obtaining 4 objects and placing them in the spots, that would be one phase, right? Because you place the objects and then the thing opens. Cool, right? But now, say you take all those objects and you kind of lock all those objects individually up. Maybe you lock them 2 and 2. So now you have to do this puzzle and you have to do this puzzle. So now we're at 2 phases. So now you lock up all 4 of them and they're all different, right? So now we're at 3 phases, because the amount of stuff that you have to do in order to get what is ultimately a very simple solution, it just keeps adding up. It's all a time equation, right? Like, a difficulty in this term is all going to be how long does this take? And that's why I use the kind of like split the object as an example, because obviously, like, puzzles can be difficult for other reasons other than just physical location. But you know, at a baseline, they're going to have to at least move the thing, right? Maybe they have to solve a Simon Says. So now you know the Simon Says is going to take, you know, at least a minute, at least 2 minutes or whatever, right? You know, over the years, I've had puzzles that were probably not fair because of stuff like that, where like the time it took to get through what I'm describing as a phase was not appropriate. And so it became hard for the players to progress through that, because like that was the break point, right? Like that's where the difficulty spiked, is that all of a sudden, instead of having to do 3 things to solve this puzzle, you had to do 4 things, and that 4th thing was just an absolute killer, right? So that I guess that's how I would rate difficulty. Again, unfairly difficulty is just kind of lack of context, and that's the whole outside knowledge thing. Like, you can't reasonably expect someone to name capitals, and if in a more gentrified version of that, if you had a matching game where you only gave a word bank and you kind of like hinted at what it was supposed to be, if you don't explicitly tell them that information somewhere else in that room, it's still unfair, even if it becomes a guessing game. You know, like, so there, that's again when it becomes quote unquote difficult, is when it becomes just blatantly unfair. Like, it is a fundamental problem with the escape room puzzle model, is the lowest common denominator outside knowledge issue. You just like, there's ways of kind of getting around it, but you can't reliably say that you're like, say you gave somebody homework, and I say that in like the funnest way possible. But say you gave somebody like, okay, well, you're about to go do this escape room. Here's your role. You have a murder mystery role. Here's your role. I promise you cannot like guarantee anybody's going to actually invest in that. You get your percentage, of course, but those are the same kind of people who enjoy your narrative, right? Like it's a very small percentage. Yeah. So that is what it is. Difficulty is all in play styles, right? It's what's the actual goal of the game. Difficulty is a fun thing to play with. Perhaps winning is not winning, where it's like, okay, well, this thing is that's the Bodeborg model, right? Like their entire model is that thing that it's so impossible that you're supposed to fail out within 2 minutes or less. And the fun part is figuring out how not to fail out. So, like difficulty doesn't always mean that it's easy. It just means that it's fair, yeah.
Hey guys, it's about 7:15 our time almost. I think we need to wrap it up. Austin, is there any last question we have? You might be.
I've got one real quick. Low voltage lighting. 12-volt lighting you can get pretty much anywhere. You can get on Amazon 5-volt, 12-volt, 9-volt. You can also get it at Fright Props, the Nano Spotlight. You can also get it at Halloween FX, the Gantum Spotlight. And then there's Ned's LEDs. So yeah, quite a few places to get it. LED stripping, you can get that at Walmart. And then you can get little quick connectors off of Amazon so that you can take control of the LED stripping. That's a really easy way to get a lot of great coverage very, very quickly.
Awesome. All right, we'll take. I have 2 more questions. We'll go through these, and then we'll call it for today. And then I will share the recording for everyone. Anyone out there, have you designed escape rooms that you can play a few times, like choose your adventure escape room, so to speak?
That's been my holy grail this entire time. I have been searching for that basically since I started. And I have designed a mobile one. It's a 2-minute one, and that's the whole point, is to replay it over and over again. You're supposed to fail out. It's the Bodeborg model. You're supposed to fail out early often and kind of figure out where you're supposed to go on a relatively simple game overall. Yeah, I do have a design in my head that I finally know how to actually accomplish. I really want to build an RPG room where you choose your own path, and you kind of choose between the roles that you have to accomplish in order to level up and beat the monster, whatever it is. But yeah, trust me, I've been searching for that for a very, very, very long time. It is directly contradictory to the escape room model. And yeah, I mean, stay tuned on that one, because if you hear me talk more, I will talk about that very, very often. I bring it up at most of the Trans Worlds, or basically any of the meetups, any of the discussions. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've been sitting on the RPG one for a while. I finally know how to do it from a technical standpoint. So.
Okay, last question. So do you build electronic puzzles to be able to override / solve them manually in case of malfunctioning electronics, or if you want groups to skip them or to skip that specific puzzle? If yes, how do you implement it? Question.
Yes, absolutely. I call it breadboards if it's a bunch of overrides. Otherwise, it's just emergency buttons. So generally, and this is a state-by-state thing, if you lock somebody in a room fully with no egress whatsoever, meaning that every single exit is locked, sometimes it is considered kidnapping legally. New Hampshire is like that. A lot of the northeastern states are like that. So what that means, and the way you get around that, is basically you put an emergency release on the maglock on the door, right? So the door is not physically locked. It has a maglock up top, and then it has a double-sided, as in both sides of the door, emergency release. The emergency release button is wired normally closed, which means the wires are connected by default. And then when you press the button, it breaks it physically. That sounds more graphic than it is. It's by design, so it can be undone. But yeah, so that way you can get out immediately. As far as override stuff, you can do that a couple different ways. If it's a digital input, most of the time it'll allow you to have a digital stimulus, which means that you can just press a button and it'll trigger whatever you need to trigger. If it's a physical stimulus, it probably means that you have all your props wired into your control board. And so that means that you can duplicate those wires and then run those connections in parallel, so that you can also build yourself a button board. What that means in layman's terms is that if you have 9 props or whatever, you can have a button that represents the solving of those all props, which is actually a great question to end on, because that's kind of the representation of the full circle. That's full circle. Keep in mind that all of this boils down to, is it solved or is it not for me? That's it, right? So you could definitely build a game, and you could 100% build a haunt where all you have is 8 buttons in front of you, and all those buttons do is 8 different effects. That's it. That's the game, right? We just automated a little bit more and put a little bit more intrigue behind pressing said button, maybe have them do a couple more things. Your local state, Patricia, your local state department is going to be your best bet for finding that. It's going to be a fire code, because that's really going to, honestly, it's always going to be the fire code. Like you might have building codes, and that's just the states being picky, but it's almost always going to be fire who has a problem with anything. Like fog machines, it's going to be your fire department who says no. The whole, locking thing, it's going to be your fire department who says you have to enforce it. Your exits, your stairways, like it's always the fire department. Typically, you may have to go talk to the state, but start with your marshal.
All right, so everyone, thank you for joining. I'm going to put a link in the chat. I know many of you saw the initial link, how you signed up for this initially. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now. This is basically the sign up link to this call. If you have put your info in there, I'm going to text out the link to the YouTube video. I'll also be posting it online, and I'll probably post on this page too, but this is the only page I have set up for recording currently. So just go ahead and click that link. And if you've already clicked the link before and you sign up for this call, then you're already in and you'll get a text. If you have not, just put in, who you are. If you're an escape room owner, escape room investor, insurance provider for escape rooms, whatever you want, just put yourself in there and I'll text it out. I should have it uploaded probably within the next 48 hours. And also, if you didn't get it for whatever reason, please feel free to message me or message Dimitri or message Ian. And Ian just put his website down there so you can ask him any more in-depth questions. Perfect. Thanks, Ian. So I'm just going to hang out on this call just for a little bit longer to allow everyone to click the link and stuff like that. But other than that, we really appreciate everyone joining us. And we will be having another call next month. Same idea. Don't know the exact topic yet, but maybe Ian will be in again because he did such a good job. So thank you so much, Ian. And thank you, everyone, for being on here. And also the PowerPoint, I will get that from Ian, and I will attach that, maybe in the comments under the YouTube or the description and stuff. So everyone can have that. Alrighty.
Yeah, thanks so much for everyone showing up. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Austin, Dimitri.
Thank you.
It was fun. Like I said, I really this is what I do. I mean, I love making sure that the industry is kind of progressing as a whole, and I do truly believe it's kind of a it happens at the bottom. It happens step by step where, more people just learn how to be better owners and more well-rounded and all that stuff. And I try to make sure that I am able to help with resources for people who want to learn. So
nice.
My camera's kind of buggered off, but
awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time.
Okay. All right. Bye.
I wonder if there's an easy way to actually get all these slides to you, because it's a power. It's not a PowerPoint. It's a Photoshop. Um,
Listen, Ian,